Huainanzi Chapter 18. The nature of humans is pure, clear, peaceful, and content. The regulators of affairs are models, nomons, the compass, and the square. If you understand the nature of humans, you will not err in nurturing yourself. If you understand the regulators of affairs, you will not be confused in your taking and giving. 118/185/20, 21. When one end emerges, it comprehends limitlessly. Roaming the 8 limits, it gathers it all into a single straw. It is called the mind. Looking at the root and knowing the branches, observing the finger and seeing the return path, holding to the one and responding to the many, grasping the essentials and ordering the details. These are called techniques. 18/185/23, 24. What the wise are at rest, where the wise go in motion, what the wise wield in affairs, that from which the wise act, this is known as the way. The way, place it in front, and the cart will not lean forward, place it behind. And the cart will not lean backward. Put in inside a cramped space, and it will not fill it, spread it over the world, and it will not be stretched. For this reason, what cause others to exalt and praise you are the strengths of the mind. 18/185/26, 28. What cause others to denigrate and slander you are the faults of the mind. Words that issue from the mouth cannot be halted among others, actions that are manifest nearby cannot be kept from afar. Affairs are difficult to complete and easily defeated, reputation is difficult to establish and easily abandoned. 1,000 li dike will breach because of a cricket or ant burrow, 100 sun roof will burn because of a spark from a crack in the chimney. To the admonitions of Yao says, trembling and shaking, take heed day by day. People do not stumble over a mountain, they stumble over an anthill. 3. This is why those who look lightly on small harms and scorn minor affairs will have many regrets. Worrying about a calamity once it has arrived is like a sick person searching for a good doctor once he has already become critically ill. Even if the doctor has the skill of a BNK4 or a UFU, 5. The patient will still not live. 18/185/30, 18/186/4. The arrival of calamity is generated by human beings, the arrival of good fortune is effected by human beings. Calamity and good fortune share a gateway, benefit and harm are neighbors. No one who is not a spirit or sage can distinguish them. 18/186/6, 7. In all people's undertaking of affairs, none dares set his plans before using his intelligence to reflect and assess. Some lead to benefit, others to harm, this is the difference between the stupid and the wise. Those who thought that they clearly knew the fulcrum of survival and extinction, the portal of calamity and good fortune, and who, having used it, become trapped in difficulty, cannot be counted. If whenever one knew what was right, one's affair would succeed, there would be no unfinished ventures in the world. For this reason, intelligence and reflection are the portals of calamity and good fortune, motion and stillness are the fulcrums of benefit and harm. The alterations and transformations of the 100 affairs, the order and chaos of the state and the household, wait for them to be effected. For this reason, one who does not fall into difficulty succeeds. 6. Thus one cannot but take heed of them. 18/186/9, 13. 18.2. The world has 3 perils, to have little potency but enjoy much favor is the first peril. To have lower talent and high position is the second peril. For one's person to be without great merit and yet to receive rich emolument is the third peril. Thus, as for things, some are increased by being decreased, some are decreased by being increased. 18/186/15, 16. How do we know this is so? In olden times, King Zhuang of Chu had just defeated Jin between the Yellow River and Yang. 7. Returning, he offered Sun Chuao a fief, but Sun Chuao declined it. When Sun Chuao was sick and about to die, he told his son, "When I have died, the king will certainly enfeoff you." You must decline the rich and fertile land and accept sandy and rocky land. Between Chu and you are the hills of Qin. 8. Its land is lacking and its reputation is bad. The people of Huainan and you both think it haunted. 10. No one considers it of any benefit. Sun Chuao died, and the king indeed did offer his son rich and fertile land as a fief. His son declined it, requesting the hills of Qin. According to the customs of Chu, officials of merit received title and emolument in the second generation, yet Sun Chuao alone survived. 11. This is what is called increasing it by reducing. What is called reducing it by increasing? In antiquity, Duke Li of Jin attacked Chu to the south, Qi to the east, Qin to the west, and Yan to the north. His soldiers marched the breadth of the world without being defeated. He awed the four directions into submission without himself surrendering. Thereupon he assembled the lords of the land at Jialing. 12. His qi was replete, his will arrogant, and he tyrannized the myriad people. Within, he had no supporting ministers, without, he had no aid from the lords of the land. He slaughtered his great ministers, he drew close to manipulators and slanderers. The next year he went traveling to the fief of the Jiangli clan. Luan Shu and Zhong Hangyan seized and imprisoned him. 13. None of the lords of the land would save him, none of the common people grieved for him. After 3 months he died. Now, victory in battle and conquest in assault and making one's territory expansive and one's name revered, these are what everyone in the world desires, yet for Duke Li they ended with his person dead and his state lost. 14. This is what is called reducing it by increasing. Sun Chuao's requesting the hills of Qin, a sandy and rocky territory, was why it was not vied for by successive generations. Duke Li of Jin's assembling of the lords of the land at Jialing was why he died in the fief of the Jiangli clan. 18/186/18, 18/187/3 The mass of people all know to view benefit as benefit and illness as illness, only the sage understands that illness is benefit, benefit is illness. The trunk of a tree that is doubly solid will certainly be harmed, the family that digs up graves to rob them will certainly suffer disaster. These speak of great benefits that conversely become harm. Zhang Wu instructed Earl Ji to wrest away the territory of Han and Wei, and Earl Ji was taken at Jinyang. Shen Shishi instructed King Zhuang of Chu to infect the descendants of the Chen clan, and King Zhuang became hegemon. 15. When Confucius read the changes, on arriving at the hexagrams loss and gain, 16 he never failed to sigh loudly, saying, gain and loss, are these not the affairs of a king? 18/187/5, 818.3 Actions, some are taken in order to benefit a person and ultimately only injure him, some are taken in order to injure a person and conversely only benefit him. The reversals of benefit and injury are the portal of calamity and good fortune. They cannot but be investigated. 18/187/8, 9 Yang who rebelled in Lu. 17 The ruler of Lu ordered the people to bar the city gate and seize him. Anyone who apprehended him would be rewarded greatly, anyone who lost him would be heavily incriminated. Being encircled 3 times, Yang Hu was about to take up his sword and cut his own throat. One of the gatekeepers stopped him, saying, I will let you out. Yang Hu thus went to the encirclement and drove them back, raising his sword and lifting his spear, he ran. The gatekeeper let him out. Turning around, Yang Hu went back to the one who let him out, stabbing him with his spear, grabbing his sleeve, and hitting him in the armpit. The one who let him out said resentfully, I had no reason to befriend you. For you, I have risked death and incurred incrimination, yet you turn and injure me. It is fitting that you should have this trouble. When the ruler of Lu heard that Yang Hu had escaped, he was greatly angry. He asked which gate Yang Hu had left through and ordered his officers to seize its gatekeeper. Thinking that if he were injured, it was because he fought, and that if he were uninjured, it was because he had let Yang Hu go, he ordered that if he were injured, he would receive a great reward, and that if he were not injured, he would be severely punished. This is what is called injuring him and yet benefiting him. 18/187/11, 17 What is called wanting to benefit a person and yet injuring him. King Gong of Chu and the people of Jin did battle at Yanling. 18 When the fighting was fierce, King Gong was injured and withdrew. Commander Xifen 19 was thirsty and asked for a drink. His page Yang Gu brought wine and gave it to him. Xifen was fond of wine, and when he tasted it, he could not stop drinking, thus he became drunk and lay down. King Gong wanted to resume battle and sent someone to summon Commander Xifen. Xifen excused himself on account of a heart malady. The king drove to see him. Entering his tent, he smelled wine. King Gong, greatly angry, said, "In today's battle I was personally wounded. The one I depended on was you, and yet you are like this. You abandon the altars of the soil and grain of Chu and have no concern for my people. I will not go into battle with you again." Thereupon he halted the army and withdrew, beheading Xifen as punishment. Thus the page Yang Gu's giving Xifen wine was not out of a desire to cause him calamity. He truly loved and wanted to please him, and ultimately it only killed him. 20 This is called wanting to benefit him and conversely injuring him. 18/187/1925 If they are sick with a fever, force them to eat. If they are sick with chills, give them a cold drink. This is what the mass of people consider therapeutic, but a good physician considers them unhealthy. What delights the eye, what delights the mind, these are what the foolish consider benefit, but what those possessed of reason avoid. Thus, the sage first scrutinizes something and only later adopts it. The mass of people adopt something and only later scrutinize it. 18/187/27, 18/188/2 18.4 To possess merit is the duty of all ministers, to be incriminated is what all ministers avoid. Yet some who possess merit have fallen under suspicion, some who commit crimes are trusted even more. Why is this? It is because those who have merit were alienated from the rightness of mercy, those who committed crimes did not dare lose their humane heart. 18/188/4, 5 The way General Liu Yang attacked Zhongshan. 21 His son was held in the city, and those in the city hung up his son to show Liu Yang. Liu Yang said, "The rightness of ruler and minister does not allow me to have selfish concern for my son." He assaulted the city even more vigorously. Zhongshan then cooked his son, sending him a cauldron of soup containing his head. Liu Yang touched it and cried over it, saying, "This is my son." He knelt before the emissary and drank 3 cups of the soup. The emissary returned and reported. The ruler of Zhongshan said, "This is one who is bound to the spot and will persist unto death, we cannot endure." Thus he surrendered to him. Liu Yang had greatly expanded Marquis Wen of Wei's territory, he possessed merit. Yet from this point on, he was daily less trusted. 22 This is what is called having merit and falling under suspicion. 18/188/7, 11 What is called committing a crime yet being trusted even more? Meng's son 23 was hunting and caught a fawn. He ordered King Cba to take it back and cook it. The fawn's mother followed him, crying. King Cba could not endure it, so he freed the fawn and gave it to its mother. Meng's son returned and asked where the fawn was. King Cba replied, its mother followed and was crying. I truly could not endure it, so I let the fawn go and gave it to its mother. Meng's son was angry and exiled King Cba. After 1 year, he took King Cba as his son's teacher. Those around him said, King Cba has transgressed against you, yet now you make him your son's teacher, why? Meng's son said, if he could not endure the suffering of a single fawn, how much less will he endure that of a human being? 24 This is what is called committing a crime and yet being trusted even more. 18/188/13, 17 Thus one cannot but be careful in one's taking and relinquishing. This is why when Gongsun Yang 25 incurred recrimination in Qin, he could not enter Wei. It was not that his merit was not great, yet his feet were bound and he had nothing upon which to tread. 26 It was because he was unrighteous. 18/188/19, 2018.5 Actions, some are undertaken to take something and conversely give it away, some are undertaken to give something away and conversely accept it. Earl Ji demanded territory from Viscount Huan of Wei. 27 Viscount Huan did not want to yield it. Ren Deng 28 said, Earl Ji's strength is such that he spreads awe throughout the world. If he demands territory and you do not grant it, this will be accepting calamity before the lords of the land. It would be better to grant it. Viscount Huan said, if he demands territory without end, what shall I do? Ren Deng said, give it to him, make him pleased. He will certainly go on to demand territory from the lords of the land, and they will surely fall in line. When we join minds to make plans with the entire world, what we gain 29 will not merely be what we have lost. Viscount Huan of Wei detached territory and gave it to him. Earl Ji then demanded territory from Viscount Kong of Han. Viscount Kong of Han did not dare fail to grant it. The lords of the land were all afraid. Earl Ji further demanded territory from Viscount Xiang of Zhao, 30 Viscount Xiang refused to grant it. At this Earl Ji allied with Han and Wei and besieged Viscount Xiang at Jinyang. The three states 31 plotted together, seizing Earl Ji and dividing his state into three. 32 This is what is called taking it and conversely giving it away. 18/188/22, 27 What is called giving it away and conversely taking it? Duke Xian of Jin wanted to obtain free passage from the state of Yu in order to attack the state of Guo. 33 He sent Yu a steed of Chu and the jade disc of Chuiji. The Duke of Yu was beguiled by the disc and the horse and wanted to grant free passage. Gong's Heike admonished him, saying, you cannot. Yu and Guo are like the cart and its wheels. 34 The wheels depend on the cart also depends on the wheels. Yu and Guo naturally depend on each other. If we give free passage, then Guo will perish in the morning and Yu will follow that night. The Duke of Yu did not listen, thus giving Jin free passage. Sun Shi 35 attacked Guo and defeated it. On his return he attacked Yu and took it too. 36 This is what is known as giving it and conversely taking it. 18/189/1, 6 The sage king spreads his potency and applies his compassion, never demanding recompense from the common people. The various sacrifices 37 are all performed, never requesting good fortune from the ghosts and spirits. 18/189/8 18.6 Mountains reach their heights and clouds and rain arise there, water reaches its depths and sea serpents and dragons are born there, the gentleman achieves his way and good and fortune and emolument come to him. Thus, the potency of yin will certainly meet the response of yang, he who conducts himself nobly in obscurity will certainly have a resplendent name. In antiquity there were no canals and dikes, floods harmed the people. You dug out longmen and walled in Yink. Leveling and ordering the water and soil, he gave the people dry land to inhabit. The common people did not hold one another close, the 5 grades of relatedness 38 were not respected. Qi taught them the rightness of ruler and minister, the closeness of father and son, the distinction between husband and wife, the order of elder and younger. The fields were left wild and not cultivated, the people did not have enough to eat. Lord Millet thus taught them how to break the earth and clear the plants, fertilize the soil, and plant the grain, thereby giving each household among the common people sufficiency. After the 3 dynasties there was no ruler who was not king, theirs was the potency of yin. The Zhou house declined, ritual and rightness were abandoned. Confucius instructed and guided the age with the way of the 3 eras. His descendants have continued his line down to the present day without break, he conducted himself nobly in obscurity. The king of Qin, Zhaozhen, 39 annexed the world and perished. Earl Ji conquered territory and was exterminated. Shangyang was dismembered, Li Si 40 was torn apart by chariots. 41 The three eras cultivated their potency and became kings, Duke Huan revived broken lineages and became hegemon. Thus, the one who plants glutinous millet will not harvest panicled millet, the one who plants resentment will not be repaid with moral potency. 18/189/10, 1818.7 In olden times, among the people of Song there was a family whose members were very close. The three generations 42 did not separate. Without warning, the household's black cow gave birth to a white calf. They asked the grandfather 43 and he said, "This is a good omen. Offer it up to the ghosts and spirits." After 1 year, the father suddenly went blind, and the cow again gave birth to a white calf. The father again sent his son to consult the grandfather. His son said, "Before we listened to grandfather and you lost your sight. If we consult him again now, what will happen?" His father said, "According to the words of the sages, one must first scrutinize and then adopt. The affair is not yet clear, we must still try asking him once more." The son again went to consult the grandfather. The grandfather said, "This is a good omen. I again instruct you to offer it to the ghosts and spirits." The son returned to convey these orders to his father. The father said, "Carry out grandfather's instructions." In 1 year, the son also suddenly went blind. Afterward Chu attacked Song, besieging the city. At this time, people traded their children for food, they cut up corpses and cooked them. The able and strong were dead, the old, sick, and children all had to mount the city walls. They defended them without failing. The king of Chu was furious. When the walls were breached, all those defending them were slaughtered. It was only because the father and son were blind that they did not mount the walls. When the army retired and the siege was lifted, both the father and son regained their vision. 18/189/20, 27 As for the revolutions and the mutual generation of calamity and good fortune, their alterations are difficult to perceive. 44 At the near frontier, there was a family of skilled diviners whose horse suddenly became lost out among the Hu 45 people. Everyone consoled them. The father said, "This will quickly turn to good fortune." After several months, the horse returned with a fine Hu steed. Everyone congratulated them. The father said, "This will quickly turn to calamity." The household was now replete with good horses, the son loved to ride, but he fell and broke his leg. Everyone consoled them. The father said, "This will quickly turn to good fortune." After 1 year, the Hu people entered the frontier in force, the able and strong all stretched their bowstrings and fought. Among the people of the near frontier, 9 out of 10 died. It was only because of lameness that father and son protected each other. Thus, good fortune becoming calamity, calamity becoming good fortune, their transformations are limitless, so profound they cannot be fathomed. 18/189/27, 18/190/6 18.8 Some are correct in word yet not comprehensive in action, some are faulty of ear and stubborn of mind yet accord with substance. Yang Tui was about to build a house, so he consulted a carpenter. The carpenter replied, "It cannot be done yet. The wood is still living. If plaster is applied to it, it will definitely warp. When green material is covered with heavy plaster it may seem completed now, but it will definitely collapse later." Yang Tui said, "Not so. As the wood dries, it gets harder, as the plaster dries, it gets lighter. When hard material is covered with light plaster, even though it is bad now, it will certainly be better later." The carpenter was out of words, he had no reply. He accepted his orders and built the house. When it was completed, it was apparently fine, but afterward it indeed collapsed. 46. This is what is known as correct in word yet not comprehensive in action. What is called faulty of ear and stubborn of mind yet according with substance. Lord Jingguo was about to fortify Shui. 47. Most of his guest clients tried to stop him, he did not listen to them. He told his heralds, "Send no word from my guest clients." A man of Qi requested an audience, saying, "I will speak only 3 words. If I surpass 3 words, please cook me alive." Lord Jingguo heard this and granted him an audience. The guest rushed forward, bowed twice, and rising, said, "Great sea fish," then retreated. Lord Jingguo stopped him, saying, "I want to hear your persuasion." The guest said, "I do not dare die for sport." Lord Jingguo said, "You, honored sir, have paid no heed to distance in coming here, I want you to explain it to me." The guest said, "The great sea fish, nets cannot stop it. Hooks cannot catch it. But if it beaches and is out of the water, then crickets and ants will have their way with it. Now Qi is your sea. If you lose Qi, do you think that Shui can survive alone?" Lord Jingguo said, "Excellent," and thereby halted the fortification of Shui. 48. This is what is called being faulty of ear and stubborn of mind, yet attaining the substance in action. 18/190/8, 19. Now using do not fortify Shui as a persuasion to halt the fortification of Shui was not as good as great sea fish. Thus things sometimes are distant yet near to it. Sometimes are near yet far off the mark. 18/190/21, 22. 18.9. Some persons' persuasions are heeded and assessments are correct, yet they become estranged from the ruler. Some persons' words are not used and assessments are not effected, yet they draw closer. How do we illustrate this? 3 states attacked Qi, 49. Besieging Pinglu. Kuazu reported to Niuzi, saying, "The territory of the 3 states does not abut ours, they crossed neighboring states to besiege Pinglu. The profit in this is not worth coveting, thus they must have come to make a reputation from us. I request that we give them the Marquis of Qi." Niuzi thought this was correct. Kuazu left, and Wu Heizi entered. 50. Niuzi related Kuazu's words to Wu Heizi. Wu Heizi said, "This is different from what I heard." Niuzi said, "The state is imperiled and cannot be secured, calamity ensnares us and cannot be escaped. What wisdom do you have to offer?" Wu Heizi said, "I have heard of ceding land to secure the altars of the soil and grain, I have heard of killing one's person and destroying one's household to preserve the state, I have never heard of giving away one's ruler for the sake of one's fief." Niuzi did not listen to Wu Heizi's words and carried out Kuazu's plan. The armies of the 3 states retired, and the territory of Pinglu was preserved. From this time on, Kuazu was daily more estranged from his lord, but Wu Heizi daily advanced in rank. Thus in strategizing for and resolving calamity, in planning for and preserving the state, Kuazu's wisdom was effective. Wu Heizi's thoughts did not lead to the proper plan, his strategies were of no benefit to the state, yet his mind harmonized with that of the ruler, he had the right conduct. 18/190/22, 18/191/4. Now people await a hat to adorn their head. Await shoes to tread the ground. Caps and shoes do not keep people warm when it is cold, do not shelter them from the wind, do not shade them from the heat. Nonetheless people wear caps and shoes because they have come to expect them. 18/191/6, 7. 18.10. Jufan conquered Chinpuo, and in the battle Yongji did not earn an ounce of merit. 51. Yet Yongji was the first to be rewarded, and Jufan was considered afterward. This was because Yongji's words were more noble. Thus rightness is what the world considers noble. 52 To speak correctly 100 times in 100 utterances is not as good as choosing one's direction and being careful of one's conduct. Some are without merit and are promoted first, some have merit and are rewarded last. How do we illustrate this? In antiquity, when Duke Wen of Jin was about to do battle with Chu at Jinpiu, he consulted Ju Fan, saying, "What should we do?" Ju Fan said, "In matters of humaneness and rightness, one can never be loyal and trustworthy enough. In matters of the battle array, one can never be deceiving or artful enough. You should deceive them, that is all." Duke Wen excused Ju Fan and asked Yang Ji. Yang Ji replied, "If in hunting, you burn the woods, you would get more animals that way, but afterward there would surely be no more animals left. If you engage others with deception and artifice, although you will increase your profit, afterward there will be no further profit. You should rectify them, that is all." But Duke Wen did not listen to Yang Ji's plan, and using Ju Fan's strategy he did battle with Chu, soundly defeating them. Upon returning home, when rewarding those who earned merit, Yang Ji was placed before Ju Fan. Everyone said, "The battle at Jinpiu was conducted according to Ju Fan's strategy, why did your majesty reward Yang Ji ahead of others?" Duke Wen said, "Ju Fan's words were the expediency of a single moment, Yang Ji's words were the benefit of myriad generations. How could I place the expediency of the moment before the benefit of myriad generations?" 5318/191/9, 18 Earl Ji led the two states of Han and Wei to attack Zhao. They besieged Jinyang, releasing the Jin River to flood it. Inside the city, people climbed trees to survive, suspended pots to cook. Viscount Xiang said to Zhang Mengtan, 54 The strength of those within the city is already exhausted, provisions are low, and most of the military officers are sick. What should we do? Zhang Mengtan said, "What is lost cannot be preserved, what is imperiled cannot be secured. I have no valuable wisdom to offer. I request to attempt to go out in secret to treat with the lords of Han and Wei." He then saw the lords of Han and Wei and persuaded them, saying, "I have heard, if the lips are lost, the teeth become cold. Now Earl Ji leads you two lords in attacking Zhao, and Zhao will be lost. Once Zhao is lost, you two lords will be next. If you do not plan for it now, calamity will overtake you two lords." The two lords said, "Earl Ji is a man who suspects those close to him and has few intimates. If our plan leaks out, the action will certainly fail. What is there to do?" Zhang Mengtan said, "The words have left your two lordships' mouths and entered my ears, who will know of them? Moreover, those of common feeling succeed together, those with the same interests die together. Think about it." The two lords then plotted with Zhang Mengtan and set a time with him. Zhang Mengtan reported back to Viscount Xiang, and on the evening of the appointed day the soldiers of the Zhao clan killed the officers guarding the dike, releasing the river to flood the army of Earl Ji. While Earl Ji's army was thrown into chaos fighting the flood, Han and Wei attacked them on the flanks. Viscount Xiang led his troops in a frontal assault. Earl Ji's army was greatly defeated, he was killed and his state was divided into 3 parts. 55 When Viscount Xiang was rewarding those who had earned merit in lifting the siege, Gao He 56 was the first to be given a reward. The assembled ministers all asked, "The survival of Jinyang was thanks to Zhang Mengtan's merit, why has Gao He been rewarded first?" Viscount Xiang said, "During the siege of Jinyang, my state and household were imperiled, and my altars of soil and grain were threatened." None among the various ministers was without an arrogant and offensive mindset. Only he did not abandon the propriety appropriate between ruler and minister. This is why I placed him first. 57 Viewed from this perspective, rightness is people's great foundation. Although one might have the merit of victory in battle or preserving the state from extinction, this does not equal the splendor of practicing rightness. Thus the Lao Tzu says, "Beautiful words can buy one prestige, beautiful deeds can advance one above others. 5818/191/2018/192/618.11 Some are incriminated yet may be rewarded, some have merit yet may be incriminated. When Ximen Bao administered Ye, 59 no millet was gathered in the granaries, no money was collected in the storehouses, no armor or weapons were stored in the armory, there were no planning meetings among the officials. People spoke several times to Marquis Wen of Wei about Ximen Bao's oversights. Marquis Wen went personally to the district, and indeed it was as people said. Marquis Wen said, "De Huang 60 appointed you to bring order to Ye, and it is greatly disordered. If you can lead, then do so. If you cannot, I will punish you." Ximen Bao said, "I have heard that a kingly ruler enriches the people, a hegemonic ruler enriches the military, a lost state enriches the storehouses. Now because you want to be hegemon or king, I have accumulated materials among the people. If you do not believe it is so, please let me mount the wall and beat the drum. Armor, weapons, millet, and grain can be immediately produced." At this he mounted the wall and beat the drum. At the first drum roll, the people donned armor, grabbed arrows, and came out carrying weapons and bows. At the second drum roll, the people came pushing handcarts loaded with millet. Marquis Wen said, "Stand them down." Ximen Bao said, "Entering this bond of trust with the people has not been the work of a single day. If now you muster them falsely even once, you will not be able to use them again." Yan has occupied 8 of Wei's cities. 61 I ask permission to strike north and reclaim our occupied territory. Thus he raised troops and attacked Yan, returning after reclaiming the territory. This is an example of being incriminated yet worthy of reward. Xiebian 62 was administering the eastern fief and turned in 3 times what his superiors had assessed as his revenue. The court officers asked that he be rewarded. Marquis Wen said, "My territory has gotten no bigger, my people have not grown more numerous. How has he tripled revenue?" They replied, "In winter he cuts wood and collects it, in spring he floats it down river to be sold." Marquis Wen said, "The people use their effort in the spring to plow, they use their strength in the summer to plant, in the autumn they harvest. To make them also cut and store wood and carry and ship logs during the winter when they have no tasks is to refuse the people rest. If the people are exhausted, what use will even triple revenue be to me? This is to have merit and yet be worthy of incrimination." 18/192/8, 2018.12 A worthy ruler does not attain anything ignobly, a loyal minister does not profit ignobly. How do we illustrate this? Earl Mu of Zhonghang assaulted Gu but could not capture it. 63 Kui Wenlun 64 said, "I know the sheriff of Gu. I ask that you not withdraw the military officers, if so, Gu can be taken." Earl Mu did not agree. His subordinates said, "If Gu can be taken without breaking a single halberd or having a single soldier wounded, why will you not send him?" Earl Mu said, "Wenlun is a devious and inhumane sort of person. If I send Wenlun to capture Gu, can I fail to reward him? If I reward him, this would be rewarding a devious person. If a devious person achieves his ambition, this would cause the warriors of the state of Jin to abandon humaneness and take up deviousness. Even if I took Gu, what use would it be?" Earl Mu assaulted the city out of a desire to expand his territory. He did not take the territory when he could acquire it because he looked at the roots and knew the branches. 18/192/22, 27 Duke Mu of Qin sent Meng Meng 65 to raise troops and launch a surprise attack on Zheng. 66 As he passed Zhou while moving east, 2 merchants of Zheng, Xiangao and Jiantuo, 67 plotted together, saying, "The army has traveled several thousand li, avoiding the territory of several lords of the land. It must be heading to attack Zheng." Whoever launches a surprise attack against a state assumes that the target is unprepared. If now we create the appearance that Zhen knows their dispositions, they will not dare advance. Then, falsifying orders from the Earl of Zhen, they made a gift to the Qin army of 12 head of cattle. The 3 commanders of the Qin army conferred together, saying, when one launches a surprise attack, the target must not be aware. Now that they already know about it, their defenses will certainly be strengthened. If we carry on, we definitely will not succeed. Thus they turned the army and headed back. Xian Zhen of Jin raised troops and attacked them, defeating them badly at Yao. 68 The Earl of Zheng thus offered a reward to Xian Gao for meritorious service in having preserved the state. Xian Gao declined it, saying, if I were to receive a reward after having lied, this would destroy the credibility of the state of Zheng. To rule a state without credibility would ruin its customs. To ruin the customs of the state by rewarding one person is not something a humane person would do. To attain rich rewards from being untrustworthy is not something a righteous person would do. Then he took his dependents and moved out among the eastern Yi, never returning to the end of his life. 69 Thus, a humane person does not harm life for the sake of desire, a wise person does not harm rightness for the sake of profit. The sage thinks of the long term, the fool thinks of the short term. 18/192/29, 18/193/8 18.13 A loyal minister works at exalting his ruler's potency, a sycophantic minister works at expanding his ruler's territory. How do we illustrate this? Xiaozhenshu 70 of Chen murdered his ruler. 71 King Zhuang of Chu attacked him, the people of Chen complied with Chu's orders. When King Zhuang had already punished the criminal, he sent troops to garrison Chen. All the nobles congratulated him. At the time Shen Shishi 72 was on an embassy to Qi, when he returned, he did not congratulate the king. King Zhuang said, Chen was without the way. I raised the 9 armies to punish them. I marched against a cruel rebel and punished a criminal, all the nobles congratulated me. You alone have not, why? Shen Shishi said, suppose a man leads an ox into someone else's field. The owner of the field kills the man and takes the ox. A crime had indeed been committed, but the punishment was even worse. Now you feel that Chen is without the way, you take up arms and rectify them. You punish the criminal and send troops to garrison Chen. When the lords of the land hear about it, they will not think that you did it to punish a criminal, they will assume that you coveted the state of Chen. I have heard that the gentleman does not abandon rightness to obtain profit. The king said, excellent. He thus withdrew the garrison from Chen and established descendants of the ruling house of Chen to rule once more. When the lords of the land heard of it, they all paid court to Chu. This is an example of one who exalts his ruler's potency. Zhongwu 73 plotted for Earl Ji, saying, of Jin's 6 commanders, Viscount Wen of Zhonghang 74 is the weakest. He is estranged from his subordinates, so we may attack him to expand our territory. At this they attacked Fan and Zhonghang. When these had been exterminated, Zhongwu also instructed Earl Ji to demand territory from Han, Wei, and Zhao. Han and Wei detached territory and ceded it, but the Zhao clan would not do so. Then Earl Ji led Han and Wei in attacking Zhao. They besieged Jinyang for 3 years. The 3 states plotted together and agreed on a plan to attack the Ji clan, thus exterminating it. 75 This is an example of one who expands his ruler's territory. He who exalted his ruler's potency made him hegemon, he who expanded his ruler's territory caused him to be exterminated. Thus, the states of 1,000 chariots that became king through the exercise of civil potency were those of Tang and Wu, the state of 10,000 chariots lost through expanding its territory was that of Earl Ji. 18/193/10, 21 18.14 Do not undertake affairs that are not your own, do not assume a reputation that is not yours. Do not abide in riches and honor if you are without merit. One who assumes another's reputation will be cast aside, one who undertakes another's affair will fail. One who enjoys great profit without merit will ultimately come to harm. Compare it to climbing a tall tree and gazing at the four directions. Although one may feel delighted and happy, if a strong wind were to come up, no one would fail to be afraid. If you worry about calamity only after it has reached your person, a team of 6 fast horses cannot help you catch up to it. For this reason, in serving his ruler, a loyal minister accepts reward only after calculating his merit, he obtains nothing profligately, accepts office only after measuring his strength, he does not covet rank and emolument. What he is able to do, he accepts without demur. What he is incapable of, he declines without pleasure. To decline what one is capable of is to dissemble, to desire what one is incapable of is to deceive. If he declines what he cannot do and accepts what he can, he will acquire an unflagging force and have no tasks at which he is unsuccessful. 18/193/23, 28 In ancient times, Earl Ji was arrogant, having attacked and conquered Fan and Zhonghang, he further extorted territory from Han and Wei. Still, he felt he did not have enough, so he took up arms to attack Zhao. Han and Wei turned on him, his army was defeated before Jinyang. He was killed east of Jialiang, his head was made into a drinking vessel. His state was divided into 3 parts, he was laughed at by the world. This is the calamity of not knowing contentment. The Laozi says, know contentment and you will suffer no disgrace, know when to stop and you will not expire, thus may you endure a long time. 76 This says it. 18/194/1, 318.15 Some praise others yet ultimately bring them to defeat, some slander others yet conversely bring them success. How do we know this is so? Fei Wuji told King Ping of Jing, 77 Jin became hegemon by becoming close to all the Xia 78 states. Jing cannot compete with them because we are so remote. If you want to gather the lords of the land into an alliance, nothing would serve as well as greatly fortifying Qinfu and ordering Crown Prince Jian to garrison it, so as to receive the tribute of the north. You would personally collect the tribute of the south. The king of Chu liked this idea. He then ordered the crown prince to garrison Qinfu and commissioned Wu Zishi to assist him. 79 After 1 year Wu Zishi traveled to the royal residence. He said that the crown prince was extremely humane and courageous, he had been able to win the hearts of the people. The king told this to Fei Wuji. Wuji said, I have consistently heard that the crown prince is cultivating the common people internally and treating with the lords of the land externally. Qi and Jin are also assisting him, they are about to injure Chu. The action is already prepared. The king said, he is already my crown prince, what more does he demand? Fei Wuji said, he resents you for the affair of the Qin woman. 80 The king thus killed Crown Prince Jian and executed Wu Zishi. 81 This is what is called being praised yet experiencing calamity. 18/194/5, 11 What is called slandering someone, yet conversely benefiting him? Tangzi denigrated Chen Pianzi to King Wei of Qi. 82 King Wei wanted to kill him, Chen Pianzi fled to Shui with his dependents. Lord Mengchang heard of this and sent men with a carriage to receive him. After he arrived in Shui, 5 flavored meals of grass, and grain-fed meats, millet, and sorghum were sent to him 3 times daily. In winter he was clothed in fur and down, in summer he donned ramie and linen. When he traveled, he rode in a heavy carriage drawn by fine horses. Lord Mengchang asked him, You, master, were born in Qi and grew up in Qi, is there anything about Qi that you think of? He replied, I think about Tangzi. Lord Mengchang said, is not Tangzi the one who slandered you? Chen Pianzi said, he is. Lord Mengchang said, why do you think about him? He replied, when I lived in Qi, I ate coarse grain for my staple, pigweed and bean sprouts for my main course. On winter days I froze, on summer days I sweltered. Since Tangza slandered me, and I came to you, I dine on grass, and grain-fed animals, I eat millet and sorghum for my staple, I wear light and warm clothes, I ride in a heavy carriage. This is why I think of him. This is called slandering someone yet conversely benefiting them. For this reason, one cannot be too careful of slander and praise. 18/194/13, 2018.16 Some covet life yet conversely die, some scorn death yet manage to live, some go slowly yet conversely hurry. How do we know this is so? Among the people of Liu, there was a man who avenged his father in Qi. Having split open his enemy's abdomen and exposed his heart, he sat and straightened his cap, rose, and readjusted his robe. Walking slowly out the door, he mounted his carriage and walked the horses, his countenance did not alter. His driver wanted to gallop, he grabbed his driver and stopped him, saying, "Today I set out to avenge my father intent on death. Now the deed is already done, what reason is there to leave?" Those pursuing him said, "This is a man of discipline, we cannot kill him." They opened their cordon and let him go. If he had not taken the time to belt his robe or adjust his cap, if he had crawled out, mounted his carriage, and sped off, he would not have survived to go 10 paces. Now, sitting and straightening his cap, rising and readjusting his robe, walking slowly out the door, mounting his carriage, and walking the horses, his countenance never altering is what the mass of people would think leads to death. Yet, in fact, it conversely gained him life. This is what is known as running. 83 At the gallop is slower than walking. Running is what people deem fast, walking is what people deem slow. In this case, he conversely used what people deem slow to go fast, he was clear as to the distinction. One who understands the speed of slowness and the slowness of speed is near the way. When the Yellow Emperor lost his dark pearl, he sent grieving for pearl and grasping to search for it. Yet they could not get it, so he sent forget sorrow and only then got it back. 84/194/22, 18/195/3 18.17 The sage respects the small and is cautious of the subtle, in action he does not lose a moment. He makes 100 preparations and takes double precautions, thus calamity never arises. When planning for good fortune, he underestimates, when contemplating calamity, he overestimates. If frost descends on both in the same day, those who take shelter will suffer no harm. If the fool has prepared, his merit will be the same as that of the wise. When the flame is still sputtering, one finger can extinguish it. When the leak in the dike is the size of a mouse hole, it can be plugged by a clump of earth. Once the fire has ignited Menzhou and set Yunmen ablaze, once the water has breached the 9 rivers and flooded Jingzhou, 85 Even if one raised the multitudes of the 3 armies, one could not save the situation. 18/15/5, 10 Accumulated love creates good fortune, accumulated resentment creates calamity. Once the carbuncle bursts, the pus will be copious. Zhuyu Yang 86 told Duke Jian of Qi, 87 Chen Chengchang and Zhu 88 hate each other intensely. I fear this will develop into a problem that will endanger the state. You had best dismiss one of them. Duke Jian did not listen. Not long afterward, Chen Chengchang indeed attacked Zhu in the palace hall and murdered Duke Jian at court. 89 This is an example of not knowing to respect the small origins of affairs. The Ji clan and Ho clan had a cockfight. 90 The Ho clan armored its cock, and the Ji clan gave its cock metal spurs. The Ji clan cock did not win. Ji Pingza 91 was angry, so he invaded the palace of the Ho clan and attacked them. Earl Zhao of Ho was angered, and he denounced him to Duke Zhao of Liu, 92 saying, when the dissacrifice is performed to Duke Xiang in the ancestral temple, there are only 2 rows of dancers, all the rest of them dance for the Ji clan. The Ji clans being without the way and recognizing no authority has gone on for a long time. If you do not punish them, they will endanger the altars of the soil and grain. The Duke was enraged and spoke of this to Zhejiaju. 93 Zhejiaju said, the Ji clan has gained the masses, they are the first of the three families. 94 Their potency is great, their might is strong, what can your majesty do? Duke Zhao did not listen to him and sent Earl Zhao of Ho to lead soldiers in an assault on the Ji clan. The Zongsun clan and the Shu Sun clan plotted together, saying, without the Ji clan, our death will not be long off. Then they raised troops to save the Ji clan. Earl Zhao of Ho died defeated, Duke Zhao of Lu fled to Qi. 95 Thus the birth of a calamity can begin with the rooster's foot and, at its greatest extent, end with the loss of the altars of the soil and grain. 18/195/12, 24 When the woman of Cai rocked the boat, the army of Qi invaded Chu. 96 Two men formed a grudge, and Zheyu was killed in the palace hall. Duke Jian met with death, perishing without issue. When the Chen clan replaced them, Qi was without the Lu house. 97 Two houses fought cocks, the Ji clan used metal spurs. The Ho clan created trouble, Duke Zhao of Lu fled. Thus, where the army camps, thorns and brambles will grow. 98 Once it is born, calamity is not soon eradicated, it is like fire reaching an arid place or flood reaching a wetland. Soak it and it grows greater. A carbuncle breaks out on a finger, but its pain spreads to the entire body. Thus, moths and ants can fell pillars and bridges, 99 Mosquitoes and gadflies can stampede cattle and sheep. This says it all. 18/195/26, 29 18.18 All people diligently make preparations in case of disaster, yet none is able to understand how to prevent a disaster from occurring. Preventing a disaster is easier than preparing for a disaster, yet none apply themselves to this task, so there is not yet anyone with whom to discuss this art. The ducal scion of Jin, Chang'er, 100, was crossing Cao. The ruler of Cao wanted to see his joined ribs, 101, and so he ordered him to fish naked. Shifuji 102 stopped him, saying, the ducal scion is not an ordinary person. The three men who are following him all could be aides of a hegemon or king. If you treat him without propriety, it will certainly bring distress to the state. The ruler did not listen. When Chang'er returned to his state, he raised an army and assaulted Cao, thus exterminating it. The ruler of Cao's death at another's hand, the ruination of his altars of the soil and grain, all these calamities originated in forcing Chang'er to fish naked. Qi and Chu wanted to save Cao, they could not preserve it. 103 If Shifuji's words had been listened to, the disaster of extinction would not have occurred. 18/196/1, 6 Now if you do not apply yourself to preventing disasters from occurring but attempt to deal with them once they have occurred, even if you had the wisdom of a sage, you could not plan for it. Moreover, the sources of disaster and calamity have a myriad starting points and no sure direction. This is why the sage abides remotely and avoids disgrace, remaining quiescent and tranquil and awaiting the moment. Petty people do not understand the portals of calamity and good fortune. They move erratically, impeded by nets and snares. Although they make detailed precautions, how will this suffice to preserve their persons? It is comparable to digging a pond after one's house is lost to fire or using a fan after one has donned a coat. Moreover, if the walls of the pond have 10,000 holes, and you plug one, will the fish not quickly find an escape? If the house has 100 doors, and you lock one, will the thief not quickly find an entrance? The collapse of the wall begins with a crack, if the sword breaks, there was definitely a nick. The sage sees them early, thus none of the myriad things can do him harm. Great stewards is served food to Prime Minister Ziguo. 104 Prime Minister Ziguo tried the stew and it was hot, so he grabbed a goblet of grain water 105 and poured it into the stew. The next day, Great Steward Zizou resigned his post and went home. His driver said, "The grand stewardship of Chu is not easily attained, so why did you resign your post and give it up?" Zizou said, "The Prime Minister is careless in conduct and neglects propriety, it will not be difficult for him to disgrace others." The next year the Prime Minister threw down the Director of Court Gentlemen and flogged him 300 strokes. A superior official first avoids calamity and only afterward pursues benefit, first distances himself from disgrace and only afterward seeks reputation. Great Steward Zizou's perception of ends and beginnings was subtle. 18/196/6, 16 Before the goose or the swan has hatched from the egg, if you poke 106 it with one finger, it will disintegrate and become shapeless. Once its sinews and bones are already formed and its feathers and wings have matured, then it flaps its wings and flies up, leaping to the floating clouds. Its back carries the blue sky, its breast scrapes the red mists. It soars above the atmosphere, it roams among the rainbows. Even if one had a strong bow, sharp arrows, a fine tether cord, and the skill of Bojozi, 107 one still could not reach it. Where the waters of the Yangtze first emerge from Mount Min, one can hitch up one's robe and jump across it. Coming to where it passes Dongting, rushes through Shishan, and crosses Dantu, 108 it throws up waves and billows. In a boat, one cannot cross it in a single day. For this reason, the sages often pursue affairs beyond the formless and do not rest their thoughts or exhaust their reflections on actual events. Thus disaster and calamity cannot harm them. 18/196/18, 23 18.19 Someone asked of Confucius, "What type of person is Yan Hui?" He replied, "A humane person." "I do not equal him." "What type of person is Zigong?" He said, "An eloquent person." "I do not equal him." "What type of person is Zilu?" He said, "A brave person." "I do not equal him." The guest said, "These three people are all more worthy than you, yet you lead them, why?" Confucius said, "I can be humane or stern, eloquent or inarticulate, brave or timorous. If I could trade my 3 students' abilities for my one way, I would not do it." Confucius knew how to apply these qualities. 18/196/25, 28 Liu An of Qin 109 was passing through the mountains and encountered bandits. They stole his carriage and horses, took his sacks and boxes, and stripped him of his robe and coat. When the bandits looked back at him, he did not have a frightened countenance or a distressed disposition, he was cheerful as if content. The bandits thus asked him, "We having taken your possessions and your goods, robbed you at knife point, yet you are not upset, why?" Liu An of Qin said, "Carriages and horses are what carry my person, robes and coats are what cover my physical frame." The sage does not harm what he nurtures for the sake of that with which he nurtures it. The bandits looked at one another and laughed, saying, "If he will not harm his life on account of desire or encumber his physical frame for the sake of profit, he is a sage of this generation. If someone like this was ever to meet the king, he would certainly make us his business." Thus they went back and killed him. 110 This shows that one can be wise to the wise, but one cannot be wise to the unwise. One can be brave to the courageous, but one cannot be brave to the cowardly. All those who have the way respond to all situations yet are never lacking. They encounter difficulty and are able to avoid it, thus the world honors them. In this case Liu An understood how to act for himself, but he did not understand how to act for others. His reasoning was not yet penetrating. When people can move from brilliance to obscurity, they are near the way. The Odes say, people have a saying, "There is no wise man who is not a fool." 111 This says it all. 18/197/1, 8:18.20 Actions, some are done in order to cause something and ultimately ruin it, some are done to ward off something and ultimately bring it about. How do we know this is so? The first emperor of Qin spread out the records and charts. Their text read, "Who will destroy Qin?" 112 Thus he sent out 500,000 troops and dispatched Duke Men 113 and Yang Wengzi 114 to command. They built the Great Wall extending from Liaosha to the west, striking north as far as the Liao River, 115 and terminating to the east in Korea. The people of the internal commanderies of the Middle Kingdom pulled carts to supply them. The first emperor of Qin also valued the rhinoceros horn, ivory, jade, and pearls of Yu. Thus he sent Commandant Tu Sui 116 with 500,000 troops. These were made into 5 armies. One army fortified the mountain peak at Xingken, 117 One army defended the pass at Juyi, 118 One army was positioned at the capital of Fanyu, 119 One army guarded the frontier at Nanyi, 121 army encamped at the Yugan River. 121 For 3 years, they did not take off their armor or unstring their bows. Supervisor Liu 122 was sent to transport their provisions. He also used soldiers to dig canals and thus open the route for supplies. They fought with the people of Yu and killed Yi Susang, the ruler of 11OU 123 but all the Yu people went into the forests and lived with the birds and beasts, none was willing to be captured by the Qin. They conferred with one another in establishing a brave and outstanding man as commander and attacked the Qin by night, greatly crushing them. They killed Commandant Tu Sui, and there were tens of thousands of bloody corpses. Qin thus sent more guards to defend against the Yu. At this time men could not farm their fields, and women could not gather hemp or make thread. The emaciated and weak pushed carriages on the roads, noblemen met one another at the crossroads carrying baskets. The sick were not cared for, the dead were not buried. At that point Chen Sheng rose in days. 124 He raised his arm, gave a great shout, and rolled the world up like a rug all the way to Shi. 125 Liu Bang and Xiangyu 126 raised righteous soldiers following after Chen Sheng and secured his victory. Like snapping a withered tree or shaking loose hanging fruit, the Qin thus lost the empire. The calamity resided in defending against the Hu and seeking profit in Yu. They wanted to know that building the Great Wall would defend against collapse, they did not know that building the Great Wall would be the cause of their collapse. They sent more guards to defend against the Yu and did not know that their troubles would arise from within. When the magpie first notices that the season of the year is becoming very windy, it leaves the high trees and makes its nest in the lower branches. Adult humans who pass by thus take their chicks, children who come by steal their eggs. It knows to prepare against distant troubles yet forgets the closer disaster. Thus, the preparations of Qin equal the wisdom of the magpie. 18/197/10, 22:18.21 Some contend for profit yet conversely strengthen their opponent, some listen and obey yet conversely impede their leader. How do we know this is so? Duke Ai of Liu 127 wanted to expand his residence westward. The court scribe fought this, saying that to expand the residence westward would be inauspicious. Duke Ai flushed and became angry. Many of his attendants admonished him, but he would not listen. Thereupon the Duke asked his tutor, Zages why, 128 I want to expand my residence, and the court scribe thinks it is inauspicious. What do you think? Zages Y said, in the world there are 3 bad auguries and expanding one's residence to the west is not among them. Duke Ai was greatly pleased. 129 After a moment, he asked, what are called the 3 bad auguries? Zay replied, not practicing ritual and rightness is one bad augury. Unchecked greed is the second bad augury. Not listening to forceful admonition is the third bad augury. Duke Ai became silent and deep in thought. Sighing, 130 He reversed himself and thus did not expand the residence westward. The court scribe thought that contending with the duke could halt him, but he did not understand how he could be enticed by not contending with him. The wise leave the path and attain the way, fools stick to the way and lose the path. The skill of Niu 131 was such that there was no knot he could not untie. 132 It was not that he could untie all knots, he did not untie what could not be untied. One who has reached the point of untying it by not untying it is one with whom one can reach the utmost. 133 Reasoning 18/197/24, 18/198/6 18.22 Some make manifest ritual and rightness and promote the essence of the way, but do not succeed. Some abandon structure and speak rashly, but conversely hit the mark. How do we illustrate this? Confucius was traveling in the eastern countryside when his horse escaped and ate some farmers' crops. The country people were angry, so they took the horse and tethered it. Confucius sent Zigong to persuade them. He used polite phrases, 134 but they did not understand. Confucius said, if what you use to persuade them is what people are unable to listen to, it is like using the great Lao sacrificial feast to feed a wild animal or the 9 harmonies 135 to serenade the flying birds. This is my mistake, it is not your oversight. Thereupon he sent the groom to persuade them. When he got there, the groom said to the country people, you till from the East Sea all the way to the West Sea. When my horse becomes lost, where could it go that it would not be eating your crops? The country people were greatly pleased, they let the horse go and gave it to him. 136 A persuasion like this had no technique, yet paradoxically it worked. Affairs reach a point at which skill is not as good as ineptness, thus the sage measures the mortise and corrects the tenon. If you sing gathering water chestnuts and play Northern Bank 137 to rustics, they will not find them as harmonious as late do. 138 It is not that the singer is inept, it is that the listeners are different. Thus, cross strokes do not extend, a continuous circle is never broken. When things do not communicate with one another, the sage does not fight them. 18/198/8, 1518.23 Humaneness is what the common people admire, rightness is what the masses exalt. To do what people admire, to practice what people exalt, this is what the stern father teaches his sons, and the way in which the loyal minister serves his ruler. However, in any age there are those who use them and suffer personal death and the loss of their states, because they do not understand the times. In antiquity, King Yan of Su 139 loved practicing humaneness and rightness. The lands that paid court to him numbered 32 states. Wang Xunli 140 said to King Zhuang of Chu, if you do not assault Su, you must conversely pay court to Su. The king said, King Yan is a ruler who has the way, he practices humaneness and rightness. I should not attack him. Wang Xunli said, I have heard it said, the contest between the great and the small, the strong and the weak, is like throwing a stone at an egg or a tiger devouring a piglet. What doubt is there of the outcome? Moreover, there is no confusion greater than practicing civility without being able to extend its potency, practicing martiality without being able to rely on its power. The king of Chu said, excellent. Thereupon he took up arms and assaulted Su, exterminating it. This is an example of understanding humaneness and rightness and not understanding the alterations of the age. Jasmine and Angelica 141 are what beauties love to wear, once they are steeped in rancid water used to wash rice, they cannot retain their fragrance. In antiquity, the 5 thearchs valued potency, the 3 kingly dynasties used rightness, the 5 hegemons relied on strength. In this case, taking the ways of thearchs and kings and applying them in the age of the 5 hegemons was like riding a fast horse to pursue someone into the underbrush or performing a ceremony in one's rain clothes. If you plant after the frost descends and harvest while the ice melts and want something to eat, you will be in trouble. 18/198/17, 27 Thus the changes says, the submerged dragon does not act. 142 This says that the times cannot be moved. Thus, the gentleman is diligent all day, cautious as if beset by night, therefore he incurs no blame. 143 Diligent all day is moving during yang. Cautious as if beset by night is resting during yin. Moving in accord with the day and resting in accord with the night is something that only those who have the way can do. King Yan of Su practiced rightness and was exterminated, Zikui of Yan practiced humaneness and was deposed. 144 Duke A loved Confucians and lost territory, the Lord of Dai became a Mahist and was annihilated. 145 Extermination, deposition, loss of territory, and annihilation are the fate of the cruel and rebellious, yet these four rulers all were lost by being humane, righteous, Confucian, and Mahist. It is because the times they encountered required that they act differently. It is not that humaneness, rightness, and the teachings of Confucius and Mozi do not work. If you use them in the wrong era, you will be trapped by them. 18/198/27 18/199/4 18.24 A halberd is used to attack fortifications, a mirror is used to reflect one's physical frame. If a eunuch gets a halberd, he will use it to cut sunflowers, if a blind man gets a mirror, he will use it to cover his water flask. This is because they do not know how these things are applied. Thus, although the level of excellence and mediocrity are the same, criticism and praise are decided by custom. Although what is chosen and rejected may be the same, whether it is deviant or compliant is decided by the times. Kuangju 146 refused emolument and was punished, Duanganmu 147 declined the office of prime minister and became eminent. Their actions were the same, but their profit and harm differed because the times made it so. Thus even if the sage has ambition, if he does not meet with his era, his efforts will suffice only to preserve his person. What merit or reputation can he achieve? 18/199/6, 11 If you understand what heaven does and understand what human beings accomplish, then you have what you need to make your way in the age. If you understand heaven but do not understand humankind, then you will not be able to interact with ordinary people. If you understand humankind but do not understand heaven, you will not be able to be a companion to the way. Shanbao 148 turned away from the age and departed from the vulgar. He lived on a cliff and drank from a valley stream. He did not wear silk or hemp, he did not eat the 5 grains. After 70 years he still had the complexion of a child. In the end he met a hungry tiger who killed and ate him. 149 Zhangyi 150 was fond of courtesy. Whenever he crossed the palace court, he always hurried, whenever he encountered anyone from his village, he always bowed. He treated all servants and grooms with the utmost propriety. But he did not live out his lifespan, he developed a fever and died. 151 Bao nurtured his interior, and a tiger ate his exterior, Yi cultivated his exterior, and sickness attacked his interior. Thus the one who corrected his thoughts and harmonized his feelings was robbed by the hard and the strong, the one who devoted himself to external things was devoured by yin and yang. They both persisted in their tasks but were deficient in balancing them. A knight who has the way transforms externally but does not transform internally. Transforming externally is how one approaches other people. Not transforming internally is how one preserves one's person. Thus within, one has unified and stable discipline, without, one can withdraw and extend, expand and contract, close and open. One moves and shifts with things, thus in 10,000 undertakings one is never trapped. The sage is honored because he can alter as a dragon can. In this case Dan Bao and Zhang Yi tightly maintained a single discipline and promoted a single conduct. Even though it shattered and extinguished them, they would not change it. This is to be focused on petty affections and blocked from the great way. 18/199/13, 2218.25 Zhao Xianmeng 152 saved a starving man under a twisted mulberry, and the world called him humane. 153 Ci Fei of Jing was beset in the middle of the Yangtze, he did not lose his treasure, and the world called him brave. 154 For this reason, on seeing some small conduct, one may figure out the greater pattern. Tian Zifang 155 went out and saw an old horse on the thoroughfare. Sighing, he had an idea and asked his driver, "What horse is that?" The driver said, "That was one of the ducal house's stable. Now it is retired and not used, thus they have sent it out and sold it." Tian Zifang said, "When young, to covet its strength, when old, to abandon its body, this is what a humane person will not do." He bought the horse with a bolt of silk. On hearing of this, retired warriors all knew to whom their hearts should turn. Duke Zhuang of Qi went hunting, there was an insect that raised its legs to fight with his chariot wheel. He asked his driver, "What insect is this?" The driver replied, "That is what is called the mantis. Among all the insects this one knows only how to advance, not retreat. Without assessing its strength, it scorns its opponent." 156 Duke Zhuang said, "If it were human, it would be one of the world's bravest warriors." At this he turned the chariot to avoid it. When brave warriors heard of this, they knew for whom to fight to the death. Thus, Tian Zifang sheltered an old horse, and the kingdom of Wei exalted him. Duke Zhuang of Qi avoided one mantis, and brave warriors turned to him. Tang taught how to bless the nets, and 40 states paid court. 157 King Wen buried the bones of the dead, and the 9 Yi submitted. 158 King Wu shaded the sun-stroked man beneath a tree, cradling him with his left arm and fanning him with his right, and the world cherished his potency. 159 King Gujian of Yu released one innocent man from jail. He grabbed his sword dragon abyss and cut his thigh, so that the blood ran down to his feet, to punish himself, and his warriors resolved to die. They were moved by his mercy. Thus the sages act on the small scale so that they may encompass the large scale, they are thorough with respect to the near so that they may embrace the far. When Sun Chuao released the river at Qixi and irrigated the countryside of Yulu, 160 King Zhuang knew he could be prime minister. When Zifa divided tasks up so that work and leisure were equal, the state of Qi knew that he could be commander of the military. These both are cases of taking shape in the small and the subtle yet penetrating to the grand pattern. 18/199/24, 18/200/10 18.26 When the sage undertakes an affair, he does not pay extra attention to it. He investigates its basis, that is all. If 10,000 people were to tune a bell, they could not get it near the proper pitch. If you find someone who really understands music, one person will suffice. The arguments of persuaders are also like this. If they truly achieve their aim, there is no need for more. The essence of what makes a cart able to travel 1,000 miles is in 3 inches of axle. If you exhort people and cannot move them, if you warn people and cannot halt them, it is because the basis of your words is not reasonable. In the olden days, the Lord of Wei paid court to Wu and the King of Wu 161 imprisoned him, intending to cast him out to the sea. The persuaders and officials opposed the king yet could not stop him. When the Lord of Lu heard of this, he unhooked his bells and drums and attended court in white mourning clothes. When Confucius saw him, he said, "Why do you look distressed?" The Lord of Lu said, "The lords of the land have no kin, only the other lords of the land are our kin. The nobles have no companions, only other nobles are their companions. Now the Lord of Wei has paid court to Wu, and the King of Wu has imprisoned him and wants to cast him out to sea. Who would think that someone as humane and righteous as the Lord of Wei would encounter this difficulty? I would like to save him but am unable. What can I do about it? Confucius said, if you would like to save him, then please let Zigong go. The Lord of Lu summoned Zigong and granted him a general's seal. Zigong declined it, saying, rank is of no aid in resolving calamity, it resides in the way that one takes as one's basis. Traveling incognito, he arrived in Wu and saw Great Steward Pai. 162 Great Steward Pai was very pleased with him and wanted to recommend him to the king. Zigong said, you are not able to make a persuasion for the king, why don't I make one for you? Great Steward Pai said, how do you know that I am not able? Zigong said, when the Lord of Wei came, half of Wei said that it would be better to pay court to Jin, the other half said that it would be better to pay court to Wu. However, the Lord of Wei felt that he could consign his flesh and bones to Wu, so he bound himself by oath and awaited orders. Now you receive the Lord of Wei and imprison him and also want to cast him out to sea. This is rewarding those who spoke for paying court to Jin and punishing those who spoke for paying court to Wu. Moreover, the lords of the land all consider the arrival of the Lord of Wei as an augury. If now he pays court to Wu and does not benefit, they all will shift their hearts to Jin. If you hope to complete the work of becoming hegemon, will it not be difficult? Great Steward Pai went into court and repeated this to the king. The king responded by issuing orders to the 100 officials that said, for the next 10 days, anyone who does not treat the Lord of Wei with perfect propriety will die. Zigong may be said to have understood how to persuade. 163 18/200/12, 27 Duke Ai of Lu was building living quarters, and they were very large. Gongsuanzi 164 admonished him, saying, if rooms are big, when one occupies them with a great many people, they are cacophonous, when one occupies them with few people, they are gloomy. I would urge you to amend them. The Duke said, I hear and obey. Yet the building of the living quarters continued uninterrupted. Gongsuanzi had an audience again and said, when the state is small and the living quarters are large, when the common people hear of it, they will certainly resent my ruler. When the lords of the land hear of it, they will certainly scorn my state. The Lord of Lu said, I hear and obey. Yet the building of the living quarters continued uninterrupted. Gongsuanzi had an audience again and said, to the left is the ancestral temple of Duke Zhao, and to the right is the ancestral temple of Duke Mu. To build such grand rooms next to the temples of the two former lords, can it not be harmful to the sun? 165 The Duke thereupon ordered that work be stopped and that the frame be disassembled and discarded. The Lord of Lu was determined in his desire to build the living quarters, Gongsuanzi was persistent in curbing him. Yet of 3 persuasions, only one was listened to, the other 2 were not the Duke's way. If you cast a hook at the riverside, and after it has been in all day, you are unable to catch a single white fish, it is not that the river fish do not eat, it is that what you are using as bait is not what they desire. When a skilled hand grasps the pole, casts the hook and pierces biting lips, he is able to do so because he has lured the fish with what they desire. There is no thing about which nothing can be done, only people who have nothing they can do. Lead and cinnabar are of different categories and have separate colors. Yet if one can use both of them to produce scarlet, it is because one has grasped the technique. Thus intricate formulas and elegant phrases are of no aid to persuasion. Investigate what they take as the basis, that is all. 18/201/1, 918.27 The juxtapositions of the categories of things so that they are close to one another but of a different family are numerous and difficult to recognize. Thus some are placed in categories to which they do not belong, some are excluded from categories to which they do belong. Some seem so and are not, some are not and seem so. A proverb says, when a hawk dropped a rotten mouse, the Yu clan was lost. What does this mean? It is said that the Yu clan were tycoons of Liang. Their household was replete with riches, they had limitless gold and coins, immeasurable wealth and goods. They raised a lofty tower on the edge of the highway on which they staged musical performances, served wine, and played games of chess. 166 As some wandering swordsmen passed under the tower together, one of the chess players above 167 moved against his friend's position and laughed as he turned over two pieces. 168 Just at that moment a flying hawk dropped a rotten mouse as it passed and hit the wandering swordsman. The wandering swordsmen said to one another, "The Yu clan's days of wealth and happiness have been long, and they often are scornful of other people's wool. We did not dare to disturb them, yet they insult us with a dead mouse. If this is not avenged, we will not be able to stand and proclaim ourselves to the world. Let us unite our strength to a single purpose, lead all our followers, and resolve to exterminate their house." That night they attacked the Yu clan and exterminated the house. This is what is called placing it in a category in which it does not belong. 18/201/11, 18 What is called excluding it from a category to which it does belong? Chu Jian 169 told Shi Qi, Duke Sheng of Bo 170 is about to rebel. Shi Qi said, "Not so. Duke Sheng of Bo humbles his person and exalts knights, he would not dare treat the worthy arrogantly. His house lacks the safeguards of keys and locks or the security of crossbars and bolts. He uses oversized dough and who measures in distributing grain and undersized jin and liang weights when collecting it. Your assessment of him is inaccurate." Chu Jian replied, "These conditions are precisely why he will rebel." After 3 years, Duke Sheng of Bo indeed did rebel, 171 killing Prime Minister Zijiao 172 and Minister of War Ziki. 173 This is what is called being excluded from a category yet belonging to it. 18/201/2023 What is called seeming so and yet not? Zifa was the magistrate of Shanghai. 174 A common person committed a crime and faced punishment. The case was disputed and the arguments made. When it was decided before the magistrate, Zifa sighed with a pitiful heart. When the criminal had been punished, he did not forget Zifa's kindness. After this, Zifa committed a crime against King Wei 175 and fled. The man who had been punished thus disguised the one who had been kind to him, and the man who had been kind fled with him to a hut below the city walls. When pursuers arrived, the man stamped his foot and said angrily, "Zifa oversaw and decided my crime and had me punished, my hatred for him makes my bones and marrow ache. If I could get his flesh and eat it, I could never have enough." The pursuers all felt he was truthful and did not search the interior, so Zifa survived. This is what is called seeming so and yet not. 176 18/201/25, 29 What is called not yet seeming so? In antiquity, King Gujian of Yu humbled himself to King Fuke of Wu. 177 He asked to serve Fuke personally as his minister and to give Fuke his wife as concubine. He supplied the 4 seasonal sacrifices and remanded tribute every spring and autumn. He took down the altars of the soil and grain, exerted his energies like a commoner, lived in seclusion, and fought in the front ranks. He was extremely humble in all courtesies and extremely submissive in all speech. He distanced himself far from the mind of a rebel, yet with 3,000 men he captured Fuke at Gugzu. 178 One cannot fail to examine these 4 cases. What makes it difficult to understand affairs is that people hide their origins and conceal their tracks, they establish the selfish in the place of the impartial, they incline toward the deviant over the correct and confuse other people's minds with victory. If one could make what people harbor internally tally perfectly with what they express externally, then the world would have no lost states or broken households. When the fox catches the pheasant, it must first prostrate its body and lower its ears 179 and wait for the pheasant to come. The pheasant sees this and believes it, thus it can be enticed and captured. If the fox were to widen its eyes and stare directly at the pheasant, manifesting its lethal inclination, the pheasant would know to be alarmed and fly far off, thus escaping the fox's wrath. The mutual deception of human artifice is not merely the cunning of birds and beasts. The resemblances between things and categories that cannot be externally assessed are numerous and difficult to recognize. For this reason, they cannot but be investigated. 18/202/1, 8.